Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ma'am, sir. So here's my recorded discussion on my topic. So I've decided to record also my lesson in order for me to be ready in case there is a sudden interruption of online class. So I would like to start my report through this question. For you, what are the ingredients of a lasting relationship? Or friendship with someone, or relationship with someone. Alright, for me, the ingredients of a lasting relationship or friendship is, of course, love, trust, understanding, and of course, core values. So we must have this in order for us to make our relationship with someone stronger and lasting. Similar to our lesson for today, ingredients are like our topic for today, which is about, can you guess? Alright, chemical forces. Similar to ingredients in a long-lasting relationship is like chemical forces. There are two broad categories of chemical forces. We have intramolecular forces, or like the internal and personal bonds that we have with other people. Our core values, trust, commitment, understanding, which defines the relationship's foundation. And intermolecular forces naman are like external or support systems that we have, like our family, community, our circle of friends, which help sustain this relationship that we have. So this concept of chemical forces in chemistry can be metaphorically correlated with the ingredients of a long-lasting relationship because both interactions creates stability, connection, and strength over time. So the balance between these two makes the relationship strong, resilient, allowing it to endure any challenges that we have in life, which is what makes a long-lasting relationship. So for today, my topic is about chemical forces, the intramolecular forces and intermolecular forces. Now, do you have any idea about the difference between the two? Okay, when we say intramolecular forces, intra, it is the forces within molecules, between atoms, while intermolecular forces is the forces between molecules. So, a molecule to its neighboring molecules. So before we proceed to our topic for today, let us first review our basic terminologies that we know in chemistry. Of course, that will guide us in learning this topic. So what is atom, element, ion, molecule, and a compound? So for you, what is the difference between atom and element? Of course, you know the difference between the two, which is atom is a single unit of an element, which is the building blocks of matter, while the element is a collection of identical atoms, a type of substance defined by its unique number of protons. So, meaning, for example, we have gold. Gold consists of many identical Au, which is the atomic symbol of gold. A collection of identical atoms. Now, how about what is the difference between molecule and a compound? Alright, a compound is a specific type of a molecule. So, a molecule is a group of two or more atoms bonded together, which can be the same or different elements, like diatomic molecules, like two oxygen atoms, two nitrogen atoms, and simple molecules such as water, H2O, and carbon dioxide are molecules made of different elements, while compound is a specific type of molecule that consists of two or more different elements that are chemically bonded together. Just like water, sodium chloride. So all molecules is a compound, but not all compounds are molecule, because molecules can be a diatomic or a simple molecule. So here's our learning objectives for today. Students should be able to define, explain, and describe different types of chemical forces and their effects on properties like boiling point, vapor pressure, solubility, surface tension, and viscosity, and interpret data from online simulation to understand how intermolecular forces affect physical properties, and demonstrate interest and engagement by actively participating in discussions, providing thoughtful, detailed responses about how chemical forces influence the behavior of matter in the world around them. Okay. So our topic for today, it's about chemical forces. We will be discussing first about intramolecular forces before we jump into molecular forces. So we will be studying the forces within the molecules. So the bonding forces within molecules between the atoms. Just for this example. So bonding forces refers to the forces that holds atoms together within a molecule or a compound, while intermolecular forces are the attractive forces between molecules. This molecule, its neighboring molecules. So attractive forces are the broader term that encompasses any force that draw particles, the atoms, molecules, or ions towards each other. So bonding forces are just a specific type of attractive forces. So in intermolecular forces, it determines chemical properties, which chemical forces also influence physical properties and chemical properties. Now, can you give an example of chemical properties that you know? Alright, like flammability, reactivity with water or acids, ability to decompose, heat of reaction, and so on and so forth. While intermolecular forces determines physical properties. Physical properties such as melting points, boiling points, which stronger bonds result in higher melting and boiling points. Solubility, conductivity, states of matter, liability and ductility, mass, volume, the color, and so on and so forth. So before we discuss intramolecular forces, let us check our previous understanding about this. So what type of intermolecular force holds two hydrogen atoms together in a molecule of hydrogen? The answer is covalent bond. Which of the following is an example of ionic bond, a type of intramolecular force? Of course, sodium chloride. Which of the following factors directly influences the strength of intramolecular bonds, such as covalent bond? The answer is the number of bonds between atoms. In a molecule of hydrogen fluoride, which type of intramolecular force is responsible for the formation of the bond between hydrogen and fluorine? It is the covalent bond. Which of the following properties is most directly affected by the strength of intramolecular bond? The most directly affected is the boiling and melting point of a substance. So the part 1 of our lesson is the intramolecular forces. So Ma'am Jinky discussed the chemical bonds that we have, which is the ionic bond, covalent bond, and metallic bond. Because I discuss these intermolecular forces because it is connected to intermolecular forces, which is our next topic. So I must need to connect intramolecular forces, intermolecular forces. So let us review what we've learned. We know that ionic bond like NaCl, which forms between metal and nonmetal atom, which is sodium, which is the metal, and the chlorine, which is the nonmetal atom. It involves the transfer of electrons, which results in the positive and negative ion, formed by a strong electrostatic attraction between the ions. So in every chemical bond, there is a bonding force, or we call it intramolecular force. A covalent bond forms between two nonmetal atoms. Just for example, H2O, hydrogen is a nonmetal and oxygen is also a nonmetal. So two atoms share one or more pairs of electrons. Just like this example, the single covalent bond, the double covalent bond, and the triple covalent bond. So as we can see in this given example, chlorine, the atomic number is 17. It has a valence electron of 7. Chlorine has a valence electron of 7. So in order for it to completely be stable, or to attain the stable electron configuration, so in all cases, the goal is to achieve a stable electron configuration, similar to that of the nearest noble gas, which has a full valence shell of 8 electrons, except for helium, which has 2. So, another example, the oxygen, which has an atomic number of 8 and has a valence electron of 6. Hindi ko alam kung magkakaganon siya. And nitrogen, which has an atomic number of 7 and a valence electron of 5. So in chlorine, this is an example of a single bond covalent and a double bond covalent bond and a triple bond covalent bond. So while in metallic bond, it forms between atoms of metal involve a sea of electrons that are delocalized across a lattice of metal cations. So metallic bonding is a type of chemical bond that occurs between metal atoms. The metal cation, a positively charged metal atoms, are held together by the electrostatic attraction to the localized electrons. So this force binds the metal ions together, creating a stable structure. So the positive ions are arranged in a regular repeating pattern known as lattice. So when these metals lose their electrons, it forms an ion, which is a cation, a 2 positive charge. So these electrons are attracted to these metal ions. So in every chemical bond, there is a bonding force, or we call it intramolecular force. So here are some examples of ionic compounds: the sodium chloride, the magnesium oxide, and the calcium fluoride. So the sodium in sodium chloride has a valence electron of 1, while chlorine has a valence electron of 7. So in order for them to be stable, the metal atom must transfer his electron to the nonmetal, while magnesium has a valence electron of 2, while oxygen has a valence electron of 6. Calcium has a valence electron of 2, and fluorine has a valence electron of 7. So they transfer their electrons in order for them to be stabilized. As we can see here, the atomic structure of an element provide us the fundamental information about the arrangement of its atoms, which is directly influence its properties, its behavior, and interaction with other substances. So here's the example of covalent compounds. We have water. So the valence electron of oxygen is 6. Hydrogen is 1. The valence electron of calcium is 4. Carbon. And the valence electron of carbon, should I say, is 4. And oxygen is 6. Of course, 1, the valence electron of hydrogen, and the carbon, which is 4. So here are some examples of covalent compounds and ionic compounds. So moving forward, here's the key factors to classify a compound. Of course, the factors are the bonding type, the electronegativity difference, electron distribution, molecular geometry, and of course, we have the examples.
Now, in terms of bonding type, nonpolar covalent bonding involves electrons that are shared equally between atoms such as oxygen molecule, nitrogen molecule, methane, and carbon dioxide. So, polar covalent bonding involves electrons that are shared unequally due to the difference in electronegativities. Just for example, water and hydrogen fluoride. As we can see here in the periodic table, fluorine is far more electronegative than hydrogen. So electrons are shared unequally due to the difference in electronegativities. While it is ionic bonding when electrons are transferred from one atom to another, creating oppositely charged ions. But in terms of electronegativity difference, in nonpolar covalent bonding, the value is from 0 to 0.4. So the electronegativity difference between the atoms is either 0 or very small. While in polar covalent bonding, the value is from 0.4 to 1.7, a moderate difference in electronegativity causing an uneven distribution of electrons. While in ionic, if it's greater than 1.7, a large difference in electronegativity, a large difference causes one atom to take electrons completely from the other. So let's have an example. So remember, in polar covalent bond, electrons are unequally shared, while in nonpolar covalent bond, electrons are equally shared, just like in these given examples. So we can able to compute the polarity through the electronegativity difference. So, for example, hydrogen fluoride. So fluorine, which is in period 2, family 7A, and hydrogen, which is in period 1, family 11A. The electronegativity value of fluorine is 3.98, and the electronegativity of hydrogen is 2.20. If we compute this, 3.98 minus 2.20 is equal to 1.78, which is greater than 0.4. So it is a polar covalent bond. Let's have chlorine molecule. Chlorine, which is in period 3, family 7A, has electronegativity value of 3.16. If we compute this, 3.16 minus 3.16 is equal to 0, which is less than 0.4. So it is a nonpolar covalent bond. Another example, water. So hydrogen has approximately 2.20 electronegativity value, while oxygen has 3.44. So if we compute this, 3.44 minus 2.20 is equal to 1.24, which is greater than 0.4. So it is a polar covalent bond. While bromine molecule has electronegativity value of 2.8. So if we compute this, 2.8 minus 2.8 is equal to 0, which is less than 0.4. So we can able to conclude that all diatomic molecules, such as nitrogen molecule, oxygen molecule, and so on, are examples of nonpolar covalent bond. Next, let's proceed to electron distribution. We are done already with bonding type, electronegativity difference. Now let's discuss electron distribution. So in nonpolar covalent bond, electrons are shared equally. Therefore, there's no dipole moment. While in polar covalent bond, electrons are shared unevenly, leading to a partial charges, which creates a dipole moment. While in ionic bonding, electrons are completely transferred, leading to a full positive and negative charges. So dipole refers to separation of charge within a molecule due to the difference in electronegativity between bonded atoms, leading to a polar covalent bond. The electrons in the bond are not shared equally. So the dipole moment measure of the separation of positive and negative charges in a molecule or a bond. It quantifies the degree of polarity in a molecule and is a vector quantity, meaning it has both magnitude and direction. And the direction of the dipole is from positive end to negative end. Just like in this given example in water. Since oxygen is more electronegative than hydrogen, the pull of electrons is from hydrogen to oxygen, from positive end to the negative end. So the direction is from hydrogen to oxygen. Because this happens because the electrons in the bond are not shared equally due to the difference in electronegativity. And another example, hydrogen chloride. We know that chlorine is more electronegative than hydrogen. So, the direction is from positive end to the negative end. This happens because the electrons in the bond are not shared equally due to the difference in electronegativity between bonded atoms. So dipole moment happens in polar covalent and there's no dipole moment in nonpolar covalent. So dipole moment happens in polar covalent and not in nonpolar covalent. As we can see in this given picture below, equal dipole moments with opposite direction cancel each other. So there's no partial charges that created. So I have here a website where we can learn about the topics polarity, electronegativity, bonds, partial charge, and dipole. So this website learning goals includes predict bond polarity using electronegativity values, indicate polarity with a polar arrow or partial charges, rank bonds in order of polarity, predict molecular polarity using bond polarity and molecular shape. So let us now proceed to molecular geometry. So in nonpolar covalent bond, the molecule is usually symmetrical in shape, like linear and tetrahedral, which cancel out dipoles. While in polar covalent bond, the molecule has asymmetrical in shape, just like bent and trigonal pyramidal that does not cancel out dipoles. So here's the summary of molecular geometry in table format, which includes the key shapes, electron pair, arrangement, bond angles, examples, and polarity. So as we can see in here, those shapes that are symmetrical cancel out dipoles, while those shapes that are not symmetrical does not cancel out dipoles. Just like this linear. Just like linear, it cancel out dipoles because it is symmetrical. So, those shapes that are symmetrical cancel out dipoles, like linear and tetrahedral. While those shapes that are not symmetrical, like bent or angular, does not cancel out dipoles. So remember, in nonpolar molecules, it is even, symmetrical charge distribution. The central atom has no lone pair of electrons. The surrounding atoms are the same. There's no poles. There's no dipole. And it is ideal molecular shape. Just for this example, the methane. No lone pair on the central atom as we can see. It is symmetrical and the surrounding atoms are the same. While polar molecules, it is uneven, asymmetrical charge distribution. One side is slightly positive and the other side is slightly negative. Just for this example, the water. Hydrogen is the one that is slightly positive and the oxygen is slightly negative. So in polar molecules like water, there's lone pair on the central atom. While in nonpolar molecules, there's no lone pair on the central atom. So I have here two websites where we can learn about chemical bondings, the ionic and covalent bonding simulation. So all you have to do is to scan this if you wanted to learn more about chemical bonding. Okay, for your first activity, all you have to do is to determine whether a molecule or a compound is formed by ionic or covalent bonds. So, carbon dioxide, it is ionic or covalent. Sulfuric acid, ionic or covalent. Potassium fluoride, ionic or covalent. Propane, ionic or covalent. Magnesium, ionic or covalent. The answer are carbon dioxide, of course, a covalent compound. Sulfuric acid, covalent compound. Potassium fluoride, it is an ionic compound. Propane, a covalent compound. Magnesium oxide, of course, ionic compound. So another activity, let's play fact or bluff. So first statement, the greater the electronegativity difference between two atoms, the less polar the resulting bond. Is it fact or bluff? Bluff. A greater electronegativity difference makes the bond more polar, not less. Next, a molecule containing polar covalent bonds is always polar as a whole, regardless of its shape. The answer is bluff. The overall polarity of a molecule depends on the polarity and the geometry. For example, carbon dioxide is nonpolar despite having a polar bonds. Next, molecules with polar bonds such as carbon dioxide are nonpolar because of their symmetrical molecular geometry. Fact or bluff? Alright, fact. Symmetry can cause polar bonds to cancel out, making the molecule nonpolar, as in the case of carbon dioxide. So covalent bonds are always stronger than ionic bonds because they involve the sharing of electrons rather than the electrostatic attraction between ions. Fact or bluff? Bluff. Ionic bonds are often stronger than covalent bonds due to the strong electrostatic attraction between oppositely charged ions. Next, the higher the bond order, like triple bonds compared to single bonds, the weaker the bond due to the increased electron repulsion between atoms. Fact or bluff? Bluff. A higher bond order, like triple bond, generally makes the bond stronger, not weaker, because more electrons pairs are shared. So I wanted to share this discovery in which chemists discovered the first new chemical bond in more than a decade. So in this discovery of new chemical bond, chemists have discovered a new type of chemical bond, the first in more than a decade. It's called the 3-center 2-electron bond. This bond involves the sharing of 2 electrons between 3 atoms, unlike traditional bonds that involves only 2 atoms. So, the new bond was identified through advanced experiments and molecular modeling, where scientists analyze how electrons interact in a previously unexplored way. So, the discovery challenges existing theories of chemical bonding and could help explain complex molecular behaviors in large systems. So this breakthrough could lead to advancement in material science, helping to create new materials with unique properties and application in the field like technology, energy, and medicine.